Hi, I'm Crystal. I'm starting out my 2024 planner today, and I'm starting off by showing the finished pages. I think it's helpful to see the finished project at the beginning so you can decide if you'd like to spend the next 10 minutes with me or not. So these are my initial pages in my 2024 planner. I'm following the Junk Journal January prompts, and I will link to those below if you would like to participate. It's a lot of fun, and I find it very helpful to have some prompts to shape my journaling. So I'm starting off my 2024 planner, and I have to admit that I struggled a little bit initially. So I made some sewn signatures, and I started off by making my first page, and I hated it. So after I got done, I tore that off and started again. My second attempt I thought was way too brown. I did not like it. So third time is the charm. So I got out some paper to use as pages, got my Junk Journal January prompt, some chipboard for the cover, and I'm getting out a mini cinch machine. Santa Claus brought it to me. And by Santa Claus, I mean me. I bought this for myself. So this is my first time ever using a mini cinch machine. Literally, I just read the instructions, and I'm going to put the holes in the cover. But the instructions seem very clear, and the process seems very straightforward. You put this little bar in as a spacer, so you know where to stop. Push down on what is basically a giant punch, makes these nice holes. And the little spacer bar comes in and out so you can move it around. But obviously you want your covers and your pages to all have the same spacing. So once the holes are in, you can put the spacer bar away. And then this little blue knob on the left, you just put that down into one of the holes you just punched and just punch your way across the project. So you don't really need the giant cinch machine. I mean, this mini cinch machine will do exactly the same thing. You just have to do it several times to get all the way across a large project. Super easy to use. I was really impressed with how easy it was. So now that I've got my covers ready and I can see this process will work, I got my pages out, and I'm going to take apart this attempt that I made using the sewn signatures. I'm just cutting the stitches out of the middle of this sewn signature, and I'm going to discard all of the tea-dyed or coffee-dyed pages. It didn't vibe with me. I didn't like how it looked. I'm gonna just set those aside and use those some other time. The other pages, obviously, I think I can still get some use from, but those tea-dyed pages were just too much. So I will use these pages. I cut everything down to an appropriate size, and some of the pages they're too much. I mean, there's like this map is fine, but there's too much printing on the back for my taste. So I'm going to take this off and do a little bit of acrylic paint swiping and gesso, and then I will come back. The other pages are just fine. So I made those up into my book, and still there were a couple where the gesso just didn't get the job done. So I think it's time for some collage. So I've got some collage bits out. So this is something I tore out of a magazine that I'm going to start with in the bottom left-hand corner, and then I'm just going to add other collage elements. So I've got some origami paper, and I've got some offcuts from some stamping projects, and I guess technically this last bit is decoupage because it's tissue paper, but I'm putting the tissue paper down, and then once I get this whole collage built, I'm going to coat the whole thing with a light coat of gesso, and that's how it turned out. So I'm finally at the point where I can start to actually journal in my 2024 planner, but this is my starting point. So I built my pages, I did some die cutting on the edges to make some decorative edges, I did a little bit of gesso and acrylic paint swipe, and where you see some stenciling or some die cuts already adhered, that was just from a previous project. So I'm continuing to use all my projects. I made a few little pockets as I went along, and just getting ready to use all these pages. Hopefully I will like the stenciling and die cuts when I get to those points in my planner, but this is my starting point. So I've got a mix of blues and greens here. I definitely find it easier to work in kind of a cohesive color palette. I really struggle trying to mix warm tones and cool tones. But here's another little pocket I made. And that was the veterinary advertisement page. That was a flyer for a lecture, more map pages. advertisement for a travel service. Here's a little fold-out page. Another piece of junk mail that I collaged. That was for a reunion. And then this was another advertisement for travel. And then when we get to the end, I've got a Kleenex box. So now that I've got my book ready, my pages ready, I'm going to my bin of Junk Journal January, where I've got the prompt list, and I've gone through my bits and pieces and picked out some things that I think will be appropriate. I've got a bag for each month that I'm going to work on in this Junk Journal January period, and I've got some die cuts, and I've picked out the prompts I'm going to assign to each month. So I'm taking out my January bag and my book, and we'll get started on the first month by emptying out the bag that's got some paper and some die cuts that I think will be appropriate for the prompts that I've selected for January. So the month title is something I made during Dephemerember, which is a December Ephemera challenge hosted by 49 Dragonflies. And the clock with wings is another item that I made during that. So I'm just starting out by dithering about whether I can save this tuck spot I made in my second attempt, where I want to put my inspiration painting, which of these magazine words I'm going to use to represent my resolutions, and basically just dithering around about what I want to include out of this pile. So I go through quite a bit of that, and after I've picked out what I want to include, I am going to go ahead and glue all that stuff down and go from there. And then I'm going to dither around about my placement of the clock and everything else. This went on for way too long. So I've glued down my words for resolutions. It's still a little bit too prominent for my taste. And so I'm going to decoupage on some tissue on top of this. I'm going to stick a little piece of wax paper under the page so I can get the edges with my glue stick. And then apply my tissue paper. And I think that that's a good effect. You can still read the words, but they're not quite as prominent. Then I'm going to take my clock with wings that I made during the December Ephemera Challenge and dither about whether it needs a backing or not. Do I need the whole clock or not? Really, I was very indecisive about this. Hopefully I will get a little bit more decisive as I go on to other months. I decided to use the clock with no additional backing, but I trimmed off the bells and the legs and just use the clock with wings. So my resolutions are about balancing enjoyment and commitments. I am in my late 50s with a congenital heart defect, so I really need to think about how I'm spending my time. So still can't decide if I can use that tuck spot. I think I can't save it. I think I'm going to have to save that for another time. But sorting through my die cuts to decide what I will use for decoration on these couple of pages and what I will use for my tuck spot. And let's see how we end up here. I think I'm going to make that a top flip. I think that's going to work out pretty nicely. But I think, yeah, a little more dithering. Here we go. The month title, there's my quote, "Start where you are, use what you have, do what you can." That's from Arthur Ashe. I think that's very inspiring. There's my inspiration painting, one of my favorites, from J.M.W. Turner from 1845. I think that definitely qualifies as a throwback. I've made that a top flip. Got a little picture of a gargoyle from Glenwood Cemetery. And I've got my resolution page. And of course that's all about finding balance, using my time effectively. Then I'm going to go on to the next page where I have got a tuck spot. So I did this collage in some earlier project, but I added the tuck spot out of heavy vellum in the end. And then I've attached my daily log with some seasonally appropriate die cuts. So I'm going to use my daily log to record my plans for the month of January. And my plans are all about my YouTube videos. So obviously my first one is this one. And then I'm jotting down my idea for my next video, which is going to be a craft room tour. I really love craft room tours. So all of this is, of course, following the prompts from Junk Journal January, and I will link the prompt list below. There's also a printable ephemera. And if you are a junk journaler, I hope you'll join us because it is a lot of fun. So I thank you for joining me today, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks.